Hello again, Plaid friends. Welcome back to the www.plaidavenger.com, where we just don't want to hear the news. We want to understand the news. And man, it's been an Asian-packed news month in November for the United States, and particularly U.S. President Barack Obama, who has entitled himself the Pacific President during the last month. And let's talk about what that means. And in fact, that's what it's really all about. Let's entitle this Plaidcast a specifically Pacific President. What's that all about? Well, as I suggested, there's been a lot of Asian news centering around U.S. President Barack Obama. He did his first full-fledged Asian tour. He's been president for about a year now, and he finally took a week, about 8 or 9 days actually. It took a week to go to visit major entities and major powers in Asia, and entitled himself the Pacific President on his very first stop. He first stopped off November 13th in Japan to visit Prime Minister Hatoyama, the newly elected Prime Minister of Japan, who is a little center-left and who is, since coming to office, has kind of actually been pulling away his country a little bit from its deep ties with the United States. So, business is first. President Obama stops off in Japan and makes sure to solidify up a very strong and deep and long relationship that it has with its number one Asian ally, Japan. And he did a decent job of that. And while there, in his very first speech, alluded to himself as the first Pacific President. What does that mean? Why is the Plaid Avenger getting his plaid panties in a bunch about this Pacific President nonsense? Well, he called himself the Pacific President because he was born in the Pacific, from Hawaii. But that's just trivial fact. Obama is alluding to a much bigger thing that's going on, not just with the United States focusing more on Asia, but with the wider world focusing on a rising Asia. And that's what this Plaidcast is all about. Let's kind of summarize some other events that he did during his Asian tour and see some other things that happened when he got home. After his stop off in Japan, they went, okay. The Japanese, of course, loved him because Japan and the United States love each other. They're a little icy right now, but they still love each other. He went to Singapore on November 14th and 15th to visit with a couple of major Asian-based trade blocs. The first one on the 14th he met with was APEC, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Group, a 21-state, member state group that's based solely on trade. And the thing they have in common, these 21 countries, they all border the Pacific Ocean. There it is again, that Pacific word. And while relations, I wouldn't call them icy because it's a global recession, because the U.S. is largely blamed for the global recession, the APEC reception was cool, civil, nice, but no groundbreaking, nothing really happening. Everybody's nice. They said, hey, we need to boost trade. We need to boost production. We need to lower tariffs. That's what we do. And hey, come on, let's all rally. All of our countries should help our banking systems out and help our industries out so that we can make more and all trade more. Yada, yada. That was all nice. The next day was much more important. On November 15th, Obama met with ASEAN. And this is kind of special, friends. I want you to remember this. ASEAN, that's ASEAN, ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, is a 10-member state bloc based mostly on trade, although ASEAN has allusions to be something much bigger, like the EU, maybe incorporating a common foreign policy and common electric grids and common other things. But it's young yet. They're still mostly just a trade bloc. And it's Southeast Asian nations, from Burma over to Vietnam, the Philippines, down to Indonesia. It's 10 nations in Southeast Asia form this bloc. And this is important because this is the first time a U.S. president has actually visited with the group. What? How's the U.S. not involved in every trade bloc on planet Earth? That's a good question, and Obama's trying to fix that right now. Former President Bush was actually invited to ASEAN several times and declined several times. And this is the first time ever in the history of the United States we've sat in on the meeting. And this was all hugs and kisses, man. The ASEAN people loved Obama, and they're very focused on increased trade and increased ties with the United States because right now they don't have a lot. It's decent, but they want more. For his part, Obama, leading the United States, is being very sly and making sure that he gets inroads with ASEAN and everybody else he can in Asia. Because, come on, let's face it, Asia's the exploding economies on planet Earth right now. Asia's where the action is. And to not be involved and never gone to an ASEAN meeting is kind of an embarrassment. They want to increase trade. They want to do more with the United States, and the United States wants to do more with them. So this is a very, very big deal. Very happy time. Everybody with smiles on their faces. The ASEAN meeting, specifically a big deal for the Pacific president to associate the United States with this very important and growing trade bloc. Here's why it's important, by the way. I'm just not ranting here, friends. ASEAN, you might also hear it in the news, is referred to as ASEAN plus 3. Who's the plus 3? The ASEAN plus 3 grouping is that 10 bloc ASEAN association, along with the plus 3 Japan, South Korea, and China. Specifically, China. Wow, that is a major trade bloc. If you got these 10 down here, and then China, Japan, and South Korea, 3 of the biggest economies in Asia, all in a single trade umbrella, man, that's money, that's a big deal, and it is. Japan is the number 2 economy. China's number 3. South Korea is like number 12 or 13 and growing. These are all growing economic entities. This is a very big deal. China, for its part, would very much like to keep it an Asian thing. That's why it's the plus 3. China wants to say, hey, we're the center of economic activity here. We're the big boy on the block. We want to associate with ASEAN. We'll let Japan and South Korea join. And this is an Asian thing. And the U.S. is being very smart and saying, hey, we might want to make inroads into this now. We don't want it just to be an Asian thing. APEC is a Pacific thing. Let's make ASEAN plus more than just 3. We want involvement too. So that's a big deal. The rest of the Asian tour after that was Obama being nice and other Asian leaders being nice to him. He goes on to Shanghai and then Beijing and visits with, of course, a Chinese president, Hu Jintao. He probably met with Premier Wen Jiabao as well. I'm not so sure about that. He visited the Great Wall, lots of other things. They were all nice to each other. No big deal signed. No big agreements on, say, greenhouse gas emission cuts or anything like that. Most pundits and political goofballs across planet Earth have said, oh my God, what a waste of time. It was a terrible thing for Obama. Nothing came of it. It was a disastrous tour. Dudes, chill. It was a tour. It was a visit. And if anybody knows anything about Chinese negotiations, is that they don't happen instantaneously. The Chinese don't do anything like that. The first meeting you have with the Chinese is the warm-up, all right? That's the holding hands before the date even begins. So simply because nothing happened during this tour, don't be so quick as to write it off as a complete failure. These things take time. The Chinese will wait centuries to develop and cultivate a relationship. They ain't no one-night stand. So after his nicety tour of China, he went on to finish the tour November 19th in South Korea, meeting with President Myung-Bak of South Korea to establish, of course, trade ties with them, and of course to perhaps deal with the North Korean wacko nutjob nuclear issue there. So all in all, a nice tour, nothing big major signed. However, making inroads into Asia, that's what I want you to remember, making inroads into China, Japan, solidifying relationships with Japan and South Korea, and making inroads into ASEAN. It is kind of a big deal because that is the future. And before I finish off this podcast, what happened as soon as he got home? 1 week later, polish the silver, dust all the shelves, because it's time to have the first official state visit by a foreign leader to the United States. Obama's been in office a year. This is the first official, big-time, big party head of state coming to visit this head of state at the White House. Throw a big tent, and guess who came? In the first official state visit to the United States, it was Prime Minister Manmohan Singh of India. That's another Asian. That's right, it was Asian November, Asian Persuasion November for U.S. President Barack Obama. That's how important Asia is to the United States and to the world, in that he went and visited Asia for a week, and to make sure he didn't piss off the other big Asian power, 1 week later invites Manmohan Singh for the official White House dinner. The first. That's saying something. You probably heard about this, by the way. You probably heard about Prime Minister Manmohan Singh coming to visit the White House. Oh, wait a minute. No, you didn't.